just a bloke in a bar.
What up, guys? Before we get into it, this is brought to you by the Bloke Club. That's right, the brand new Bloke Club. Head to www.bloke.club to go in the entry to win a Mazda BT50. That's right. Each month, the Bloke Club gives away prizes. In the fourth month, it's a Mazda BT50, thanks to Luke Ricketson. He is the one providing it from Aspley Mazda. Go to his Instagram, LDC_01. He is the best in the business when it comes to cars, and he has provided us, the Bloke Club, a Mazda BT50. That's right. And all entries are completely free. Anyone can join the Bloke Club. It's at bloke.club. And we give away prizes every single month, the first month being $2,000 cash. And also, it's brought to you by Grumpy Coffee. Head to grumpycoffee.com.au. Grab your Grumpy Coffee. We got multiple different blends every day, very grumpy. We've got pods, we've got whole bean, we've got ground. We've got it all at grumpycoffee.com, the best. Grumpycoffee.com.au, the best coffee in the business. But with that out of the way, got the big fella, Luke Ricketson here. How you going, brother?
Good, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm very good. I'm very good. I'm stoked to have you on, mate. I'm stoked to have you on. How have you been?
Been well. Yeah, no, been good. Yeah, body's all right. I sort of, I recently just turned 52, so.
Okay, don't look a day older,
well, I don't know, mate. Bit greyer since then, but yeah, I'm in pretty good shape. I feel like, you know, I look back and look at a lot of the old players that come in the sheds back in the day at 52, and they'd all be limping in and bad knees and hips and all that sort of stuff. So I was lucky enough that I finished in reasonable shape. My knees haven't given way yet, and I haven't got a major limp, so we're going all right.
Mate, you've been life after footy for quite a while, but what are you doing right now? Because I think by the time you hit probably your age, you've probably found your passion post-footy. It takes quite a while. It might be different for you. It took me a few years to find my passion. What are you doing right now?
Really good point, actually. Yeah, I think post-footy is about a 5-year journey. I reckon you sort of you're really confused in that first 5 years, and I bounced around a few different jobs just trying to find out what I kind of wanted to do, and then I fell into the insurance game, insurance broking.
The insurance game?
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Wow.
No one ever says they go into a university course or post-school to go into insurance. You sort of fall into it. And so I was working at a mid-tier brokerage for about 8 or so years and really enjoyed it. I mean, general broking, I mean, it's kind of across so many different businesses. It's not just one particular brand of business. So I just really enjoyed the industry. And then I was able to start my own business about 4.5 years ago. So very original name, Ricketson Insurance. I'm based out of Bly Street in town and got a couple of employees. And yeah, I enjoy it, but not only the part of enjoying it, it's just running my business I really enjoy. And I think doing it in my own style. And I'm just pretty comfortable about what I can do and the business. So I think that's another part of it when you can actually sit there and I'm comfortable going into work and talking business and enjoying what I do. And
each day you're building towards something. You know, don't get me wrong, when you work for people, that can be the case as well. But at least with a business, you know for sure that every day you go in there, whether you're feeling down, a bit tired, a bit upset, a bit grumpy or whatever it is, at least you're building something each day. Now, in regards to going into your own business, it's a daunting task, especially for a footy player, because I'm not sure if it was for you, but a lot of my mates that played footy, they almost convinced themselves, I'm not a businessman, like I'm a sportsman, like I don't know business. But to take that leap, what kind of pushed you towards it?
And I agree with that. Yeah, I feel like you don't have the confidence, you know, it's almost, you know, you're pigeonholed playing rugby league, and I'm still pigeonholed playing rugby league, as you probably are as well. And you know, you come with a set of skills, and I think throughout my career I learned some really good skills of working with a team. You know, I built really good relationships, and I could present okay, I could speak, I could sort of have, you know, I learned pretty quickly about different sort of parts of business. So for me it was kind of, look, I worked for someone for a period of time. I gave up a lot of my IP, a lot of my relationships, and a lot of my business contacts. And I thought it was time for me to take them back and run and develop them more myself. It wasn't about, you know, monetizing. It was about having a full relationship with people I knew and trusting me with their business. So once I was confident enough to do that, build a good team around me, and I mean, let's face it, know your lane way, know what you're good at, and put people around you that have got their own set of skills. And once I did that, I'm pretty comfortable about what sort of business we are, and it's enjoyable.
Mate, how good. And in regards to the type of insurance, is it all types of insurance? Is it specific?
Pretty general, yeah. So just general across, property and hospitality, and then from professional stuff, we do a lot of fund managers in town, and so I wear the collar and the suit, mate, just in case I run into a potential client.
Mate, it's funny because whenever I wear, a suit or whatever, there'll be comments going, "What are you wearing? Get it off!" Because they're so used to seeing me in t-shirts. They're like, "Bro, stop wearing."
I hear the joke, someone look at me and say, "It's either, mate, I'm going to a funeral or going to court." So. Anyway, rugby league players, mate.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. Absolutely. We're not used to wearing them. Now, in regards to, I guess, the enjoyment part of it, like I would assume it would be fulfilling, not fulfilling that someone needs the insurance, but being there as a safety net when something goes wrong. I'm assuming that's pretty fulfilling.
Well, it's a really good point because we've just got a bunch of clients that are around the Brisbane kind of Gold Coast area through this recent cyclone. And, one thing we did is we made sure that one thing we really make sure their program's really good. So make sure that's, the insurance is in place. But then we've touched base with them through this whole period. And it's the personalised service, right? Because a lot of my friends and for them to go through that and for me to be texting or ringing and making sure that they're in good shape and if anything's going wrong, we've got a really good claims guy on standby and he was up through that whole period to make sure that they continue running their business. So for me, it was kind of, I'm close enough relationship. If you've got an issue, give me a call. We can sort it out and know that this thing will respond. If there's a claim to be had, mate, we'll get on top of it. So, like, as much as we sort of joke, it's business is business, but we've got a pretty serious part to it where, mate, we're there for you.
Yeah,
mate,
absolutely.
We can help you.
Mate, I tell you what, like, when you don't need insurance until you need it. And it sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
But let's say you're paying your insurance each month and you've been paying it for 2 or 3 years and you're sitting there looking at that each year and you're going, bloody hell, I haven't used it. But the relief you feel when something bad goes wrong and when something goes wrong and you've just got someone to take care of you, it's almost like it's worth all of those moments where you were sitting there going, do I really need this or that kind of thing?
Well, it's a hard sell. It's a grudge purchase, as we know. But I mean, at the end of the day, like my shop front is the claims and how we respond and get it done. So, look, touch wood, we've been pretty good so far, and all our clients are. I think they're all happy. So no, that's what I enjoy about the job, and it's also another part of it. Like it's not always about revenue in that sense, and I reckon there's. As much as, you've got to, build a business, but, it's about doing the right thing by people and, being fair and honest. And that's what I like about it also, running something like we'll have a discussion with our business partners and say, well, we picked up a business from another brokerage and I think they're paying too much. Well, let's not charge them too much to make sure it's a fair and reasonable fee and let's try and work on their insurances coming down. That's what we continually try and do. So, it's not a greedy business. It's about doing the right thing by clients, and that's what we try and do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're the broker. Hey, you're the one that
try and get in the best deal.
Yeah,
mate. Yeah.
Mate, what do you reckon is the best thing you've taken from footy into running your own business?
I think there's a few things. I think obviously, team environment. I think I think it's funny through sport because you get that. That not get ahead of yourself within what you do. Yeah. And I've always been, that ability to be in a team of people chipping you, not getting ahead of yourself. And I feel like, being in a business mentality, I'm, wanting to make sure that I'm the same as everyone else. I'm totally fair. And I think we sort of work as a team to do things. And I think being a good leader in that space is it's never about you. It's about elevating other people and making sure they get the credit for everything. And I think that's one thing I'm really conscious about is, we win a piece of business. It's never, you don't sit there and
I'm the man kind of thing.
Pat your own back. It's kind of about the people around you and share everything, and that's and also be very super honest. Like, I work with a few people and they said that it's funny thinking an old school broker, and this old school broker would come into work and say, every Thursday, I've got that in particular meeting. And they all knew he was playing golf every Thursday. And it's just be honest, right?
Yeah.
I'm playing golf on Thursday. I'm taking a few clients out and I'm actually going to go and spend time with some people that are pretty important to the business. Yeah. Be honest, be open and just have that trust with your people. I think that's one thing, as footballers, if you're in a squad and you got people that aren't honest, they're not going to last long.
It's a great point because, and it might sound a little bit silly. Don't get me wrong. You've got friendships in squads, but you're not good mates with everyone. Like, it's actually more important to trust everyone rather than be good mates with them. And I think that when I was at the Broncos, obviously I was, really low on the pecking order in regards to the Stars. But that's like the one thing that they had was I might even actually get along with you that well, but I respect you and I trust you more than I like you to a degree. Now, obviously there are some best mates in squads, but you know what I mean? It's that trust is so important.
Yeah, and I think you and that's the great thing about an off season, or you build that trust, right? And you kind of when you go to battle on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon, knowing that you got me, and you're right, we might not ring each other 5 times a day, but if you come and save my butt on something, then mate, you're a close mate of mine straight away. Simple as that.
Especially if I've just missed a tackle.
Well, you might be outside the friend zone,
mate. Speaking of footy, you're on the board for the Roosters. Tough loss on the weekend. I guess from your perspective, and I think a lot of Roosters fans were expecting that maybe a little bit of a transition. I wouldn't say rebuild. I don't think Roosters would ever talk about rebuilds, but transition. What do you reckon from your perspective?
Yeah, look, it's been a little bit tough. I think I was fortunate enough to go on the board 2010, lost a grand final to the Dragons, but it's been a really, from an ex-player to sort of sit on a board, obviously with Nick Politis and Mark Burris and some really influential business guys, and just to see the rise of that club through that period of time, and we won some grand finals through that era. And kind of at a point now where we sort of demand excellence in a lot of ways. To see what we did with that new stadium and to get our centre of excellence up and running, and back in my day, we trained in some pretty horrible places and we got given some pretty bad cars, but we got on with it. But now the club's one of those elite clubs, so we lost a lot of really good players last year. We could see it coming. Couldn't bank on Sam Walker and the Cheese doing their knees later part of the year, so that obviously damaged the squad as well. We've got a bunch of kids. We've always really invested well in kids, and it's time to play these kids. It will take time. I mean, like anything, it's you got to play 10 or 12 or 15 first grade games to actually get up to the pace of the game. Yeah. So that's going to take time. Yeah. Pretty tough start of the year.
Oh, mate.
So I reckon we're going to hang in there, and but we just want to see some resilience with these kids, and sort of they've got to go from playing under 19s to being first graders. We're going to demand that pretty quickly, so that's the tough job the coaching staff have got.
And for yourself, looking at this new brand of footy that probably came in 3 or 4 years ago, because you were early 2000s. You've seen so many different types of footy. You saw the wrestle come in and around 2006, 2005, 2006 when it kind of came in, and now we've seen the game speed up again. Do you enjoy this new version of the game?
Yeah, you're right. I'm actually I've seen a big shift again this year. I reckon it is it's gone up a notch, and I'm still trying to work out whether or not the big front row is still. For Pat Carrigan from a lock to now be a front rower, that's the new age front rower, I think. Yeah. And Payne Haas is an exception, but I'm now looking at saying, I don't know if whether you can carry a 125 kilo front rower. I might be wrong. I'm not quite sure, but it's that mobility around the whole pack. Game's faster, and that's where I looked at the weekend's games, and I looked at them and thought, well. There was some blowout scores because it was just so much faster, and the teams that couldn't keep up with the pace were just getting blown off the park. And that was by that bash and barge up the middle that was really quick. Yeah, everyone's on their heels, and there's good playmakers will just make you pay. So that's where the game's going. Does
it remind you a little bit of the 90s footy that you played? Because that was a very free-flowing style of footy.
Very quick, there's no doubt. Well, I was very fortunate. I think, during the sort of early 90s, I was a wing centre.
No way.
I made my debut as a winger.
So the Wingers Club, bro. Yes.
Yes, yeah. And then overnight the game had changed through those 90s, and then a lot of us outside backs that kind of enjoyed the contact and tackling, we found our way in the back row. Yep. And it was a new style of game, right? And back row suited me because it was. It was quick. You had to have a big motor, and if you could play 80 minutes in the back row there, and you could, you could handle that up and back sort of style of game, and that's where it went. So a lot of us handled that, and it sort of carried on where, for example, look at the Roosters, the Angus Crichtons of the world. He was a centre at rugby at school, and one of a great back rowers. He might be a great front rower in the future. Yeah. That's where it may continue to go.
So true, eh? Like you could definitely see Crichton moving in the back row towards it as he gets older. Mate, growing up, was it always you grew up in Foster?
I was born in Foster. My dad, a Bondi family. Okay. So my dad played for the Roosters in the late 1950s and 60s, and then back in those days, they got a bit of money to go to the bush and play sort of country football. Oh wow,
okay.
So my that's
they're going to the bush rather than the city.
Correct. So my sister was born in Temora. So she was. So he played for the Temora Dragons, won a competition there in that sort of early '60s, and then came back through Foster and played in Foster. I was born in Foster. I was there for 6 months.
Yep.
Went back to Bondi.
Wow. So Bondi boy.
My passport says Foster, and I sort of have a bit of a ode to Foster, but I'm literally eastern suburbs. And then
you can say you're a country boy.
I'm a country. Well, sort of country. And then. So sort of grew up around the eastern suburbs, basically.
Yep. And so was it always, with your old man playing footy at essentially the highest level at the time, because back then, was it always like, I just want to do what my old man does, or did you kind of find that late?
Yeah, look, interesting. I mean, it was sort of, I played junior football for Bondi United, and, I was always, not a bad little runner, so I was, scoring tries, a bit of always in the mix, and then... went to a rugby school, Waverley College, and then played rugby, and then probably lost my way a little bit as a 15, 16-year-old, and probably a bit disinterested in a little bit sort of thing. So never sort of had a bit of potential through that period. And then got to year 12, and I kind of liked the physicality, and I was okay with all the rugby side of things. And then I got a scholarship to come over to the Roosters through the connection I had back then. But I was thinking, do I go off to East Rugby and then go and try and make a path into rugby, because I had a few friends that went to play for the Wallabies, and it was probably in that sort of private school sector was all very much around about the Wallabies. So and
rugby would have been huge back then, I'm assuming.
It was giant, had a huge following and friends that sort of did that. And I was a bit of a I got this kind of scholarship, which was the Australian College of Phys Ed out of Croydon, so I had an education schostership.
Yep.
But my contract was $2,000 year one and $5,000 year two.
Mate, you're rich.
Cash. Well, not that type of cash. We're talking Roosters. But I had this trial game, and I remember going up to Henson Park, and I can't remember who he played, but I was out in the centres, and I'd come off a rugby program, and I was in the athletics team, and I kind of got this ball a few times out in a bit of freedom, and I scored 3 or 4 tries playing rugby league, and I just felt like I had all this space, and apart from rugby, and straight away it was like, well, I think this is the game for me. Like, it just sort of worked out that ended up being the game for me, and then I was like, okay, this kid is not bad on the sort of outside backs, and so it gelled straight away, and then it was okay, well, rugby league's my path, and then I got sort of commissioned to keep playing for the Roosters.
Wow. And so was it that game that the Roosters saw you and said, we're interested, or was it more just the fact that...
Yeah, no, I was straight in the system, and then we had an under-21s year that was really good, and I sort of got into this under-21s team, and just obviously turned 18, and then, it was just great. I just sort of was part of a really good squad of players, and as you know, like, being quite young for the 21s team, playing, below your age group, and then that year, at the end of that year, which was 91, you could sit on the bench. So I was sitting on the bench for first grade that last game, and Jack Gibson put me on against the Penrith Panthers, who won the grand final that year in 91, and I was 18 and number 33, and coming in the centres, and had 25 minutes of absolute fear.
Yep.
And so that was cool, right? I sort of thought, well, okay, well, he's put me on a first grade at that stage, so maybe there's an opportunity to train harder and keep going at it.
Because back then, they would literally, you could play reserve grade, and they would say, oh, you want to jump on after? Like, it wasn't so squads were so like I guess, rigid. Like,
Correct.
To now, it's like you've got to be in the first grade squad. You can only have 25 players or whatever, or 30, whatever it is.
Correct.
Whereas there's very much like if you, we'll give you a crack kind of thing back then. If
Well,
you're good.
I think, you could almost go play a full game of 21s and they say, all right, we need some more reserves for reserve grade. So you can go and sort of probably replace your jumper, but, you've got your shorts and socks you've just played in, then you sit on that bench and you may get 10, 15 minutes in there. And then some days they say, well, look, why don't you guys sit on the first grade bench as well, and we'll see what happens, which obviously happened for me that game. And, got that opportunity.
The great Jack Gibson.
Correct.
So, I mean, arguably the greatest coach of all time. A bit before my time, but obviously you hear these stories about him and, all that. I guess, what was it like? Tell us a story about Gibson to kind of...
Yeah, Jack knew my father quite well because he was actually my father's captain back in the 60s kind of thing. So we sort of had a relationship there with Jack. Not that Jack gave you any favours. I don't think he was that sort of guy. I don't think he was really, okay, well, I've got, my father's name was Doug. I've got Doug's son here. I'm going to make sure that we give him a bit of a sweeten run. Man of very few words. I never forget him telling me going on for my first trial game. I think he called me kid. Hey, kid. He called me over. He said, hey, kid, first thing you do, I want you to do the best you possibly can. And then don't worry about anything else. Just do that really well. If it's a tackle, go in as hard as you can. If it's a run as hard as you can, and the game will flow. Bye-bye, kid. And and looking back on it, the breakdown of that was just kind of don't go soft into your first play and just be really focused on do your first thing well. And I suppose it's something I probably would have taken through the rest of my career.
I mean, it's so like it's similar to the kind of line you always get told of like take an early carry or whatever. It's about getting you into
get it going.
Just because once you get in the flow of things, you're not really thinking about. Whereas if you stay out and don't get involved in the game, geez, it can go. It just passes you by.
That is quick. Yeah.
And so, how many years did you get to play under him?
Well, he was sort of coaching director through that period. Mark Murray was the coach through there, and then. So I had him for a couple of years in and around the club. I mean, my next year, I didn't get the opportunities. I sort of probably went into that little first grade, played a bit of reserve grade that next year, and then sort of 93 onwards, I started playing more first grade, which sort of kicked me off more from there. But I had Jack in and around for a little bit. Jack was another funny thing where I look back in the time and he sort of said, he wanted all his players working as well. Okay. So he was like, you got to go get a job because I was doing this college degree. And he said, I want you to go and get qualified to be a doorman.
What?
And I was like, huh? So you made me go and do a security guards course. I remember sitting doing the security guards course going, I don't even know why I'm here. I'm just sort of like, a bit of a mummy's boy, from around the eastern suburbs, and Jack's making me do like a security guard course. And then I remember getting a phone call after I did the security guards course saying, look, we wanted you on the door of some bar in the Sutherland Shire or something. And I just went, no, I'm not doing that. But I think maybe that was Jack's way of saying he wanted, that was his way of, his old school way of doing things. He had a lot of guys working on doors. Rough and tumble jobs probably made me a bit more of a man growing up. He probably wanted me to grow up, mate. Yeah. That was his way of doing it. But I never did it.
I guess it's like that almost. You make him. It's like the under-20s that have to do a job when the under-20s was in. It is really important to make sure that they understand how fortunate they are to be playing rugby league and all that. Security guard might be a little bit intense for me, but anyway. 18-year-old being a security guard.
Nah.
And so you said you started playing more first grade in 1993.
Yep.
I guess walk us through those first years. Is there any stories from that early times where you really felt, oh wow, this is first grade. Like this is the standard I need to be at to be a first grader week in, week out?
Yeah, look, long time ago too. You've got me there, but it's look, I look back on those days, and we were a very struggling club.
It's crazy to hear that,
we were just nowhere near the finals, and look, I look at it and I think we had guys like Craig Salvatore and Brendan Hall and these sort of old school players that Tuesday training was bring your collared shirt and pair of pants and go to the pub afterwards. Yeah. Even Friday nights was kind of go to the pub. Saturday morning was at Henson Park, and everyone stunk of booze on the Saturday morning, and there'd be a Sunday game wherever it was, and we'd compete for a while, but we'd always get beat. We're never in the mix, you know. I'm playing against some of these superpowered clubs, you know, the Raiders and the Broncos, you know, these big names, and you know, for me, it was just kind of hanging on for dear life. I think about now, you know, the one thing I wish I had was some specialised coaching. I mean, I was an outside back, and to think that, you know, it was pretty much a lot of dummy half running.
Yeah.
You know, there was no catching a ball out in front, skipping and trying to put your winger on.
Yeah.
I look at some of the skill level now of some of these outside backs and think, imagine being taught some of those amazing skills. It was kind of like it was free-flowing footy.
Yeah.
It was almost like we pick you in first grade because you've just got to be a footballer. Well, I probably just wasn't a footballer. I was kind of a kid that was not a bad athlete, and I played a bit of structured rugby. But I defended pretty well because I liked the contact. So I had me. I think if I was at a superpower team, I wouldn't have been in first grade.
Okay.
I did a lot of years just sort of hanging in there for the Roosters because we were a bottom 4 team for a period of time, and I did a lot of hard yards, just turning up and just doing my best.
Yeah.
And that was probably that until probably got to the mid-90s, which was a whole shift and change.
So when do you think it changed? From the Roosters went from a struggling club, and I know they've always had earlier success, but at that time a struggling club, to essentially from that point of powerhouse to now?
Look, it was Super League, yeah. So Super League had sort of struck, and then we got Phil Gould over to take over coaching. He was able to get Brad Fittler, Matty Singh. You know, he got a bunch of guys together, which he thought he could be competitive through that period. So it was the break that we sort of needed. And then Phil Gould was a complete educator in teaching blokes how to play football. Yeah. And I really didn't know about, you know, block runs or, you know, and turning the ball under and doing some plays that we had, you know, with Adrian Lamb. You know, he was a really good touch football player, and we had really specific sort of plays that was just playing fast and exciting football. And I was in the back row through Gus, and just loved the freedom of what he provided. So it was probably then that the penny dropped and thought, well, playing fast, fun football, you know, and just seeing Brad Fittler play the way that Freddie played, it was just a joy to be around that. And then we had the, you know, a lot of other, you know, the Fletchers of the world all come in through local football as well. So we sort of created this really good bond, and then we had this free-flowing football, and Gus just got us all together, and we started to really play some good footy.
Are there any similarities between Gus Gould and Jack Gibson, do you think?
I think very deep thinkers, very much very, very good with motivating people and kind of getting you to play for them, and just rugby league tragics as well. I think there's like, you know, and like no nonsense wanting you to be a man. You know, I just think that like looking at it, there was no room for you wanting to be a boy playing a man's game.
Yeah,
it was grow up really quickly. You know, we need you to, you know, you need to compete like a man. We needed you, you know. I won't say drink like a man, but we needed you to be kind of on and off the field, and we needed to be men playing a men's game. And if you weren't, you'd be found out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just it's so interesting to all of these great figures. They're not exactly the same bloke at all. Like they're different, but there are some core tenets to them. Whether it's Wayne Bennett, Gus Gould, Gibson, there's key core tenets that they all seem to have similar to each other. So he comes in and he starts, you know, teaching about the game of rugby league. When did you start to actually, because the first year, 2000, I think, was in the first grand final against the Broncos. The years before that, how were you kind of warming up to that point?
Well, we had, well, it was funny because the famous 97 grand final, we played Manly to get into the grand final. And Craig Field kicked a field goal with 3 minutes to go. I came charging through and hit a finger on the ball. Kind of bumming I never charged the ball down, but we'd sort of beat Newcastle, we'd sort of beaten Manly. Yeah. It was 97. We were kind of at the peak of our powers through Gus's influence in the period of time. Not that I'd ever want to change history because it was the greatest grand final, one of the betters, but we sort of went after that game and went back to the Leagues Club and thought, you know, like things went right that game. We had Andrew Walker, Dale Shearer played in that game.
Wow.
There's a couple of funny moments in that game. It was a muddy a game at Allianz or at the SFS at the time, and we dropped 3 or 4 balls sort of over the line kind of thing. It was one of those ones that we probably could have won, but didn't have it in us because we were the Roosters, right? We didn't have that. We just didn't have it, right?
Yeah.
And
we hadn't experienced it much before as a team.
Gus sort of going, we need to kind of get you to that grand final to understand what it's all about. So, we had that experience, and then obviously we got to 2000, and that was the moment of like, okay, we've finally got to the grand final, and celebrated like we'd got in a grand final. We thought will never happen again.
Yeah.
Thursday before, we're down in Bondi Junction in front of 15,000 people singing songs and, with Rooster flags going, we haven't experienced this for a long period of time. And sort of got to that game against a super Broncos team.
It's crazy when you look at it, you're just going, what's going on there?
Super Broncos team. We did actually pretty well, to be quite honest with you. It was kind of Luke Phillips saved us a million times around that paddock, but it was unlimited interchange. I think they'd made something like 45 changes to our sort of 21 sort of changes. It was like, Shane Webke would come off after a set to bring on Gordon Tallis, to bring on Petro Sevenasiva, to bring on Brad Thorne. Like it was kind of like, Bennett just had it sort of rolling, right? Yep. And they just they played that pretty smartly, and we hung in there for as well as we could. But it was a great experience.
Far out, like 45 interchanges,
something like that.
That is insane. But you pretty, as you just said, you'd be pretty much having 1 or 2 sets and then just getting up. You'd be fresh the whole time, like NFL, pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, Webby busted his arm pretty badly, and he played one with those big guards on his arm, and I think, he was always going to play because he's a tough bugger, Webby. But I'm assuming you could sit there and go, well, with unlimited interchange, we could pretty much work this pretty well, and his presence was enormous on the day. But play with a broken arm.
Wow,
do your thing.
And so, just take us back to that Manly grand final. Prelim. How often did you rethink like the charge down and the fingers, and if my hand was just a little bit higher, like is that just constantly be going through your head?
Oh, totally, yeah. Look, I think, I remember going into that whole final series, and we had great tussles with Manly back in the day, and obviously Gus at the helm, and it was destiny for us to get into that grand final. And yeah, it was annoying. It was annoying because look, it was also there was another try they scored down the left side, and I'd sort of come off a tackle again. So there was like a couple of things I looked back in that game going, we all did something funny in that game that we didn't normally do, and reflected a whole off-season thinking about it. But yeah, it was one of those things where you look back and you go, well, it's probably because we weren't that club, right? We hadn't been there. We made a grand final in 1980, but we won in 1974 and 1975. We'd go to every function with the 1975 grand final in black and white on the screen, and we'd sit there and that was our history. But nothing in between that. So it was kind of, how do we change history? And we just didn't believe in it probably as much.
Do you reckon the 2000 grand final, even though you lost it, was the final piece of the puzzle? Because obviously you went on to have a really dominant early 2000s.
Not really.
Yeah, okay.
Not really. I reckon, we failed the next year.
Yeah, okay.
We came out and we didn't play well at all that following year. And if I even fast forward to 2002, we had Ricky Stewart come to the club, and Ricky Stewart, let's face it, was 35 years of age, head coach, and he was like, well, what I know about you guys and what the reputation of the Roosters is you're the cafe latte set. You all like your shirts off. You're all hanging around Bondi. You're all going to the pubs down. You're all hanging at Paddington. You're a bit of a glamour club. It's not my style. And Ricky was like, this is not me. Yeah. How do I fix this? Because I'm going to coach a team. I want it to be Ricky Stewart team, not this other crap. So he bashed living Christ out of us in an off season and made us this rushing, aggressive team, and he wanted us to almost fight and scrap at every game, and that was his marker to sort of change the reputation, and he did it really quickly. Yeah, and we became a pretty aggressive, well-renowned team through that 2000. So we changed the mentality of who we were, our identity, which we did under Ricky, and then and which helped our outside backs go and do what they wanted to do, and then we sort of get to that grand final, which another one was destiny. But I mean, let's face it. After half time, we're down 8-6, and it wasn't all over at half time, and we were a bit shell shocked. And I reckon if we failed in 2002, it would have also it would have hung on us for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And just take it back to the Brisbane grand final. What do you remember the most from that leading? Because that was your first grand final. What do you remember? Because was that up in Brisbane?
No, it was here. It was out at ANZ Stadium.
Yeah. Leading into that grand final, what was the kind of build up, the nerves? I know you spoke about the on the Thursday singing the songs or whatever, but just like even the footy side of build up, what was the build up like?
Oh, look, it was it was completely exciting. I mean, we the club really didn't know what had hit them. I don't think it was. We had management and everything around it trying to work out what to do that week and to sort of get us organised. I mean, the Thursday was more, let's give the fans something, right? Let's go to Bono Junction and do a signing, and it sort of turned into bigger than Ben Hur because they had all these supporters been following us for so long that they were there to kind of they don't know whether it was going to ever happen again. So we kind of got out of that Thursday. I think that was massive, and then we did the grand final brekkie, and that was big, and it was complete excitement. We didn't. We couldn't come down from it. I could sort of tell that we were sort of hyped up through that week. And, but once again, it was kind of game day. It was an afternoon grand final as well. Still, it was a daylight grand final, and
the best.
A few guys played out of their skin.
Yeah,
and we actually played pretty well. So, just glad we didn't get flogged because they were an exceptional team. I mean, that was a star-studded team we played. It was almost. Legends of the Broncos forever. I mean, lifelong legends. So we didn't embarrass ourselves, which was good.
Is there anything that you remember from the game specifically, like when you're running out, or a play, or a moment that you go, okay, I think the game's got to go away from us? Yeah,
you know what? There was a couple of funny moments. I remember not funny moments, but I remember after half time we'd sort of come out and I remember defending with Craig Fitzgibbon, Fitzy at the time, and Fitzy went on a bit of a rage. We both on a bit of a rage at one time to try and sort of up and in and try and change the flow of the game a few times. I remember coming out of the line and try to get Brad Thorne, and he put his knee straight in my in my pelvis kind of thing.
So
I remember
big.
sort of going, and I remember Fitzy, like, great tackle. I'm going, I'm not quite sure about that. And then there was a few moments like that. I remember. And that's going back to seeing like the resolver goal like Craig Fitzgibbon, right? Just seeing his true mental capacity. I mean, that kid never gave up through that grand final. He scored late, kicked a really important goal, and there was people that performed really strong on that day, and I remember being part of that, thinking, we've got some character as this group, and it definitely came out on that day.
Yeah, and so that grand final, you don't get the win, but at the same time around that, so 99, you actually make your New South Wales debut. So I feel like, is this kind of the era where you're hitting your potential, do you think, 98 to about 2004 or 5?
Yeah, and as I said, I think, once again, I think the game really suited me. I was pretty lucky that the game had that shift. The game shifted to a bit more room, and it was kind of athletic back rowers. Steve Menzies of the world, they had Daniel Gartner, had all these really good back rowers, and Nick Kosov, who I was really good mates with. It was kind of, I was in the mix a bit. I was playing, we're winning games, and I was kind of on the fringe. I made a couple of city representative teams, and I was poking around Origin a little bit, but I probably wasn't in the mix as much as some of those great back rowers. So I felt like winning games, I was pretty happy just to be a good first grader.
Yep.
So then I got a couple of call-ups into Origin, which was terrifying early. I sort of didn't realise the enormity of Origin until later in life. But that was a good to get a couple of jumpers, but not really understand it as much.
Yeah, different time too. Like you didn't have social media back then. Like you could really be kind of like in a bubble away from something and not really know much about it to a degree. But in saying that, like to get the call, do you remember getting the call to play for New South Wales?
Yeah, mine was a funny story. So I'm at home and we got the bye weekend. So very fortunately, Wayne Pearce took them on that horse or horse weekend away. They were all riding horses, and so a few people fell off a horse. We had Nick Kosef. Apparently, Nick Kosef, I think, got allergic to the horses and sort of come out some sort of hives. Who did we have? We had Kernsey broke his collarbone, and we had Brad Clyde re-injured something in his back. So we had 3 back rows at Ryan.
From going to some horse riding thing.
Yeah, so Wayne Pearce took him on a horse riding weekend. So that broke news, I think, on the Saturday afternoon. So basically playing on the Wednesday. So he did the weekend before playing on the Wednesday. Let's go horse riding up in the Hunter Valley or something crazy like that. Horses went mad. So Liz Steet, who was the physio for the Roosters, it's also the physio for New South Wales, gives me a call on Sunday morning and says, hey, I'm just sort of in a we're gathering around here. We think that Brad Clyde's probably not going to make it through. They're throwing a bunch of names around. You're in the mix. And I said, you're kidding me. Oh, no. I said, okay, well, give me a call when you get a chance. So I'm walking around Sunday going, I'm not with a... So Sunday, about 5:30 in the afternoon, I get the call, you're in the team. So I go from, I was living at Randwick at the time, so I had to go down to the Coogee Hotel. And I go in with Robbie Ross, who was playing football at the time. I walk into a room, just really embarrassed, going, hey, guys, I'm Luke, sort of thing, hey, and I remember not sleeping that Sunday night. I had to get up Monday morning first thing and go to Brisbane, playing up an Origin in Brisbane. Wow. So then I get there and they said, okay, threw all the keys out and all the roomies. So I'm with Glenn Lazarus.
Lazo, the big fella.
So I'm nervous, haven't slept for 2 days, literally got a game in 2 days. My preparation's all over the shop. I then go into the room. The room's open. Lazo is in the double bed with the ensuite. Gear off, undies. I've got 2 single beds and I walk in and sort of introduce myself to Lazo. He sort of grunts at me. I go, terrific. And kind of went, well, you're in there. And I went sat on my single bed with my hands over my face going, what am I doing? And then I sort of rang Fletch and Nick Kosef and said, boys, can I hang with you for a while because I'm not getting much out of my room.
Lazo.
And then
can be grumpy Lazo at times.
Yeah, I just don't think he had time for me or sort of like wanting to make me feel comfortable, which was great of him. And then so then we basically had a run on a Monday, and then we had like an easy run on a Tuesday, and then I had to play on the Wednesday night. Wow. So it was a tough one, but it was great. It was great to get on. I come off the bench twice, probably played all up about 25 odd minutes. It was a wet night up there. We got beaten, obviously, but tick a box. And as I said, didn't kind of have the emotional lead up to an Origin. It was kind of like I filled a spot and I felt that was my role.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember the feeling of, the famous blue jersey though, running out,
So 2003 was my great feeling of Origin. We come off a grand final. I think I really deserved to be in that Origin team in 2003. And mate, I was all in. We obviously won the series. It was just an amazing experience. But all those Newcastle boys, the Johnses, the Badirases, Steve Simpson, my boys. We had all of the Wingies and Minis and all the boys in that. So we had this really collegiate sort of team of guys. We just bought into New South Wales, wholeheartedly. We won the series. We celebrated, and it was I mean, and in my career, I was very fortunate to have done that and won a series and be immersed in that. So it was and talking about, did you ever feel like you were totally comfortable? In 2003, I was totally comfortable.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. It is I think you get so caught up in the, how good is Origin? It's so big, it's so great. You forget, like, these are young men with this daunting thing in front of them. Like you kind of just get caught up in how good it is rather than the actual challenge that's in front of someone. Because like in the Origin arena, and I'd never experienced it, but it's another level to the NRL. So if you think the NRL's hard, like imagine how brutal bloody the Origin arena is. You could argue it's more brutal than a grand final.
I think the looking back on all that, and I'm sure it's got better, but I would. I think as a coaching team, getting a young kid in to play Origin or first grade is kind of trying to make them feel as comfortable as they possibly can, and working on them to make sure that by kick-off that they kind of know that they're part of it and they're part of a really good team and you're an integral part of that team. I think back in the day it was like expected, mate, here's your jumper, off you go and play.
Old school.
Sort of deal with it, right?
Yeah.
But I suppose back in that my Lazo moment, sitting there, if I had someone come and grab me and say, right, mate, we need you and this is what we're going to do and like here's your jumper and kind of let's work on making you feel comfortable. I may have kind of been a bit more comfortable on that night, but I was shitting myself. Mate,
it's such an interesting point though, because we always glamorise old school mentality. But that's the negative side of the old school mentality of like, mate, do your best, you'll be right. Like, whereas like today, there's no way they'd bring a young fella in and go over there.
Off you go.
Yeah, there's no way they would do that. So it's a great point, especially coming from someone that was in that old school, era. So also during this period, you break the club record for the most NRL games or first grade games. I guess for a bloke that early in his career was kind of like, in and out of the first grade side to become the most capped Rooster, what was that feeling like for you?
Well, you're probably not going to like it because I think I wasted a lot of games on the wing.
Okay.
So I got given a few.
Okay.
No. Look, I reckon, for me, I felt like, to play one first grade game, as doing the same thing was everything. To have done everything that I've in the game was pretty special. And then being a local, apart from being born in Foster, but being a local guy that got brought up with the Roosters was pretty special for me. I took over. It's kind of one funny story. I took over Kevin Hastings. Yeah. So Kevin Hastings had 226 games for the Roosters. So when I got to 227, I think Kevin was very happy about it. And I remember going there and I think he sort of challenged the fact that I'd come off the bench a few times. No. And it was like, we better check on, there's a few things, which I think from an old school guy, I kind of get, right? Because it's still a tick, in these day and age, but back then it probably wasn't much of a tick. So anyway, we got over that with Kevin. Good man, Kevin. And
that's great.
And then, but I think it was almost a bit of a light bulb moment for the Roosters in a lot of ways. We had, we started to compete, make grand finals. We changed our persona a little bit. We got a lot hungrier and, we looked after people that wanted to stay at the club for a big period of time. So for me to get to 300 was pretty cool. It was a big milestone for me, but also for the club. I share that with the club a lot. And I think it was, it was special to see the boys now continually do it. We had Mini Orbo and now JWH has sort of taken over that role. And I hope it continues on that, that my 301 becomes insignificant over a period of time. I think it's really important the club keeps in reinvesting in the guys to keep, longevity, which is cool.
And it's you were the first player as well to do the 300 over 300 games, and so I guess because you're during a period of change, how important is it to you that you were a part? And I'm sure you're too humble to say I was the reason we changed, but you were a part of the change. You were a part of the change from a side that was a bottom four side to a juggernaut. It still is a juggernaut. Is that really important to you?
Very important. Yeah. No. It's I talk about it with a lot of guys actually. We're actually proud that was the because the run's been significant post that, right? And it was almost those mid-90s, and Freddie was a huge part of that. And Freddie was almost he's the guy in my eyes that sort of changed everything. And like if I look at what Freddie did and talking about being yourself and actually being comfortable within yourself. I think Freddie got to those late 90s and he gave like the old Freddie, which he'll talk about. The old Freddie was fun.
Yep.
Lots of fun. But he just went, no, mate, the way we want to do this is like win games, win grand finals and leave a legacy. And Freddie demanded, professionalism. He demanded to get the most out of our squad. And I think he single-handedly changed the way that the Roosters prepared and thought about ourselves as a big club. So, I'm proud of the fact that we got to some grand finals. We won a grand final, 2003 and 4. We don't want to talk about, but it was a nice era of that period that we, for 4 or 5 years there that we're in the mix for that period. And then that led the club to say, well, particularly Nick Politis, right? Nick, well, that's what we want to keep achieving. And, coming third and fourth is probably not a successful year. And that's where we're up to now, where we want to play for premierships. And that's the I don't want to use the word pressure, but that is the demand on the club is literally we want to keep achieving that.
Yeah, and it's the standard that has been set. You're not just imagining a standard. You guys set the standard, and it's about achieving what that jersey has earned each year. Very similar to what the Broncos are kind of going through to a degree. Obviously, the Broncos have been a bit worse than the Roosters recently, but so 2002, walk us through that grand final, mate. That just to win a grand final in NRL, like you almost die happy.
Yeah, no. It's probably the best moment of my footy career, obviously, and almost. I don't know if my wife will listen to this, but up there with the other things. But look, I think, I told my hammy before that grand final. I was 50-50 even playing in that GF, so it was a dark moment for me. I had a moment where leading into that game, it kind of almost said no to playing. I had a grade 3 tear of the hammy the week before against the Knights. And we did the hyperbarics, did everything. And then I literally get to Saturday and Chad Robinson, God rest his soul, he was in. So we had guys like Dean Pay in our coaching group, Johnny Cartwright, obviously Ricky Wrights with his young, very experienced group of men who just said, don't risk it, mate. I wouldn't play. And then Ronnie Palmer, who was the most positive human being, or is the most positive human being you'll ever meet, he said, mate, don't give up on this. Don't let them tell you, what you should and shouldn't be doing. So he said, mate, Saturday training came, and I just said, mate, I can't do it. I just can't pre-grand final. And then going to bed that night, I was out. I woke up the next morning. I went, I actually feel a bit better.
Wow.
I don't know. I sort of grabbed it and I sort of did a stretch and I thought, and I got Ronnie and Ronnie said, okay. And I said, oh, Sticky, I think can I just give it another crack? He said, absolutely. Like you're not out until 7:30 that night kind of thing. So we grabbed David Kidwell down at Coogee Oval and I put on the boots and we went down in a secret little thing at Coogee Oval and I ran at him 10 times. He ran at me 10 times. And then I had to go and do probably about 10 100-metre sprints back to back. Wow. I went about 95%. Yeah. And I got through it.
Wow.
And then got on the massage table after that. And then I went back into the team lunch and said, I'm playing.
Wow.
I'm in. Done. And then poor Chad looked at me and went, thanks, mate. I better tell the parents. No. And then I had to sort of try and sleep that afternoon. And then it was like, warm up, mate, get warmed up and let's not stuff this up. And then, and so it was an amazing night. I mean, we played a red hot Warriors that, Stacey Jones and mate, they just, Ivan Cleary played, Kevin Campion, a good mate of mine, and they just had this really cool ability to score points. Yeah. So it was never a given, and we just we played uncharacteristically the first half, and it wasn't until probably Freddie got whacked at one stage until we changed the momentum.
Because it's almost like an urban myth, but is it true that moment, was it Villasanti?
It was Villasanti, yeah.
That moment where Freddie gets hit, it didn't lose the Warriors the game. However, it was a defining moment. Is that true? Not true? Walk us through it.
It's definitely true. Yeah. No, I think for us it was like we went into halftime 8-6 and we were shell shocked. And I remember John Cartwright just saying halfway through this whole sort of everyone sitting on their butts just wide-eyed looking at each other, going, maybe this is not the night.
Wow.
He stopped part of the talk and said, can I just grab the forwards in this back room? And I remember John Cartwright just going, guys, you're going to screw this up. Like literally, we need you blokes to fire up. This has to happen. You got not even 40 minutes. You got the first 20 minutes to change this whole momentum. Yep. Otherwise, they're going to run over you. Like this is going to happen. And we sort of looked at each other a bit still wide-eyed, going. Then we go into the second half, and it was the incident that had happened, which sort of reminded us of how we'd played all year, and reminded us of what John Cartwright had sort of said. If you don't fire up, then it's going to get away from us. And then we looked at each other, and we had a bunch of guys that were pretty emotional at the time. And Adrian Morley obviously was the one, and he led off, and we were yelling and screaming through that period. And I could kind of see the Warriors looking, going, these blokes now, split a line and everything just got quicker, and we tackled it with a bit more force, and our run, it changed.
Yeah,
No doubt.
Wow. And I mean, it goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, that trust in your teammate. Like our main man just got whacked. Diaby's back on not, and clearly that's what the catalyst was. When do you reckon the moment was where you would go, we got this? Yeah,
we scored a couple of good tries towards the end, so it started to kind of happen pretty quickly, and then there's that famous shot of Freddie where he was coming back with his hands in the air with about sort of 7 or 8 minutes to go to the crowd kind of thing. I remember going back to the line, just not wanting to believe it sort of thing. We kind of knew then sort of thing, but it was just an incredible feeling. I mean, we broke it, right? We broke that duck. It was like, for me, it was kind of, never dreamt of making first grade to kind of holding that trophy, whereas being a Roosters junior, seeing how poor we were through that period, to now being grand final winners, and just it took weeks for it to sink in. To be quite honest with you, it actually, I still wasn't really, it took so long for me to work out what we'd actually done that night.
Because you're looking at what, 25 years about since the premiership?
It was 25 years.
Yeah. It's a long time. And again, for people that are my age, people my age might know a little bit, but I came to watching footy probably around 2004, 2005. So I only know Roosters as a juggernaut, and one of the most history clubs, all that stuff. But I only know them as a dominant side that expects nothing. Whenever I played the Roosters, it was always a super brutal battle. So it's almost like strange for me to hear that they were a bottom 4 side that was struggled for, money or whatever. But you've come full circle then, you've gone from a bloke that was in and out of first grade to a bloke that's winning a premiership for your club. It's like it probably didn't sink into you till you retired, I'd assume, just how the journey that you'd been on kind of thing.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, look, it was funny because, you think about your mentality through that period of time, and then, you win that grand final in 2002, and then you demand excellence from then on, right? Yeah, and then you go, well, okay, well, this is where what it's all about. And it finally comes at the age of 30, I think, or 29 years of age, that this is what playing's all about, the dedication. And, I was lucky enough in 2003 to go to Kangaroo Tour as well, and we beat England 3-0 over there, and spent time with Darren Lockyer and these sorts of players, and it was just like, you didn't want not to be in those games, and then we obviously, had grand finals in 2003, 2004. It was like, that's expected now. Like that's what we want to do. So that back end finished off so well. I look back on some of those guys. I good mates off the Anthony Minicello, and I think many in 2002 was a baby winning a grand final. And
Yeah.
he was part of the stuff that I talk about really fondly. And there's a bunch of guys that were in their sort of early 20s to have been through that journey and got that taste.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty magical thing for a lot of those young kids. So.
And what about the selection for the Australian side? Do you remember where you were when you got the call in 2003?
Yeah, I do actually. I was I played mid-year in a sort of an Anzac Test game, and we played Newcastle, and actually got beaten by Newcastle. And I remember Gus Gould rang me, and he just gave me a call and said, "Mate, just want to let you know before the selectors ring you that you made the Australian team." So, as an old mentor of mine, and a really good mate, and obviously helped me through my career. So I got that phone call on the bus, and I didn't tell anyone for a while. I sat there and was like, "Wow." Nerves kicked in. So that was a pretty cool moment for me for that. And we beat New Zealand. That mid-year testing was always a bit lopsided, so we beat them pretty well at the stadium. And then fortunate enough to go on the tour and had an absolute blast through that tour. Walk us through the tour. It was fun. Well, we were part of that 2003, and Willie Mason had called it the Kontiki Tour. I don't know if you remember that moment, but they decided to take us over to France, Spain. We had an old-fashioned kangaroo tour. Oh, the good old days. They wouldn't do anymore. And it was just so much fun. We had a bunch of just really, really good blokes. We didn't take the number one team away. We were I think about 5 or 6 really important people pulled out. Obviously, Joey never played, and Brett Kamali was our halfback, and at one stage, the last test, Mick Crocker played 5'8", for example. Wow. It was Craig Wing played in the centres. We had a bit of a patchy sort of squad going through it, and based in Leeds, and just had the best time. And that was the one where Adrian Morley got sent off in the first first 5 seconds of that first test match, which was pretty brutal. They had a fantastic group, so it was just great to be part of that group. We won 3-0, but we won just through the skill of guys like Darren Lockyer was incredible through that whole thing. He was captain, he captained that tour. Super talented, super good bloke, and we had a blast, and obviously characters like Willie Mason on tour, and a bunch of blokes. It was good. Who do you reckon, you got into camp and you really, by this age you're a senior player, so it's not really like you're learning. You can still learn things, but not like you're a rookie learning things. But who really stood out to you as like, wow, this guy, he's a good player, but I didn't actually realise how much, effort he puts off the field and all that kind of stuff. Couple of them. We obviously got on really well with the Newcastle boys. There was the Danny Badirases, Steve Simpson. We could tell those guys were all hard work and hard effort. They relished in the fitness and conditioning work. But back to Darren Lockyer, I remember getting together and we had a bit of we had a bit of a training session on the field at Allianz Stadium, and we played offside touch. Great offside touch. Offside touch, and that's a pretty skillful game if you're good at offside touch. Pass, jump, like it's kind of find yourself in space basically the whole time. And I remember just watching Lockyer just find himself in space, playing offside touch, and you just couldn't tag him anywhere. He was just so skillful. I went, mate, that he's an exceptional athlete, and obviously very good at space and awareness. Shane Webke going away on tour, it was actually quite funny. So Webby was always in his like Aussie footy shorts. He'd wear the old school t-shirts. That was just never. He just didn't really give a shit about kind of dressing up around Leeds. It was in his old school kit, but his training ability. So Webby would always in a warm up sort of ruck game kind of thing, would always find his belly and do 2 push-ups and stand back up. So he always think about getting off the ground. Obviously, he probably thought that was important for his game. So every chance he got to go and get quickly off the ground, he would. Yeah, wow. That's such a simple, small thing, but he'd just do it anywhere. Yeah. So there was some. It was good, and we had Chris Anderson was our coach, and Chris Anderson took that old tour away, and he was old school. So we did an old school tour, which suited a lot of us, but it was old school mentality. It was train hard, but also play hard. So it was a successful tour because we won 3-0, and we had a great time, great memories. Good. Yeah, good. And it would have been in that era still where,
you would see different styles of training and stuff, whereas nowadays everyone trains the same. Like very rarely would you get into a camp and go, oh, that guy's a bit different. Or like as we're doing, I would love to ask you about, because this whole like new age eating and the way you take care of your body, the Roosters are like at the forefront of that. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Anthony Minicello, I think, introduced it early. You boys were all a part of it. Is that the truth? That I know it's true, but like for the audience?
Yeah. So there was a few things we sort of tried to change. It was definitely training patterns and, Ricky Stewart back in the day. So he was all about trying to sort of change the mindset of, what's tough and what's not tough sort of thing. So he's sort of trying to push the barriers out from that perspective. We did a little bit of that through those sort of 2000s, but Minnie got caught because he had bad back through that period and had several operations, and then realised through diet that he could actually fix part of his body. So I'd long retired through then, and he brought that part of the Roosters and sort of changed the whole diet process. And we got massive dietitians in and had a whole shift on their eating patterns. And it was everything, right? It was recovery, which was the big one, right? So I look back on the day, there was not a lot of recovery back in our day.
Straight away.
But recovery is just now so documented and important, and we just try to be really professional in that space of diet, recovery, sleep, and these sort of things. And
so interesting, mate. So 2003, played the Panthers in the grand final. You lose that one. The great tackle in the Scotty Sattler tackle, I'm pretty sure. Walk us through that one.
Yeah, it's bad to have regrets in sort of in your career, but after the taste of 2002, we jump into 2003, a way better team than the year before, and we were just off and running, and we had a pattern in place. We all trained hard. We had a really good time. We really enjoyed each other's company. We were a tight bunch of guys. To get to that grand final, and I kind of think, like, it rained that night, and we were out on our feet, and I never forget, they'd pull a tour, and they had Joel Clinton. They had a big rolling forward pack. And I remember about 60 minutes into that game, and uncharacteristically, a lot of things were kicking in, lying in the play of the ball and things that you never did. But I remember just being so out on our feet for whatever reason on that particular night, which shits me because it was never what we did. We were such a disciplined, good team through that period of time. In that particular moment, so I charged the ball down that hit me, that sort of Freddie then picked up and gave to Toddy Byrne. I remember being in the mud, looking up and kind of looking over at Freddie, and he just went, go.
Yeah.
They kind of talk it as a turning point in the game. It was a turning point because it lifted them up.
Yeah.
I think if we score, we're still behind in the scoreboard, and we still had to play a lot better to win that game. But it was a turning point because they looked at each other and said, we got this. And, talking to Ryan Girdler on the tour, and he said that he remembers going into that week, and they all said as a group, we're going to win this game.
Yeah, wow.
Penrith knew they were going to beat us. And whatever they had internally going on, they were confident they had us from the get-go, and they played that way, and they actually beat us on the night. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they were the better team.
Yeah, wow. And so the next year, though, unfortunately, you don't get to play. Walk us through that.
Yeah, got suspended for a grand final, which is another thing you just never want to get done. But
what is that? Walk us through what happened. Why did you get suspended?
So this is another crazy moment in your career where we then get, okay, so under the Ricky Stewart sort of modelling, and it's working, right?
Yeah.
So he comes to the club, and we're just at the peak of our powers. And it was about physicality. I mean, Ricky had changed the way that we operate, and it's all about a bit of intimidation and physicality and off our line, big hits and all that sort of stuff. So we had a game against the Warriors a couple of weeks before the finals, and Ned Caddick. So Ned Caddick was a bench player for us, and Ned Caddick took a hit up against the Warriors, and Guttenbeil came from an offside position and knocked him clean out.
Oh, wow.
And I remember standing around that actual tackle. It was in New Zealand, and there was Adrian Morley and myself. There was a couple of guys. We didn't actually know what to do because when it happened really quickly, and we all looked at each other, and and they were over the top high-fiving, and we had a player that was completely concussed. And we lost that game. And I remember going back to the video, and Ricky just replayed it 20 times and said, have a look at you, and you. Yeah. This will never happen again, right? This is a moment of you're not supporting your mate, blah, blah, blah. So then we had this mentality of like it's not a one in all in, but it was kind of like we have to sort of defend and it was ringing one. Fast forward to semi-final. So we play North Queensland, hyped up semi-final, going into a grand final. So on the side of the scrum, Nathan Feen sort of grabbed Freddie. I was coming out of lock. I hadn't seen it properly, but it looked, he'd thrown a little jab to Freddie.
Yeah.
So the first instinct came across and hit Nathan Feen. And then caused an all-in brawl.
Oh, God.
And then there's footage of Moz coming in, throwing like absolute haymakers, missing blokes by literally millimetres. You know, we had idiots like Mick Crocker and, you know, so it kind of just turned into this all-in kind of scrap. Anyway, we win the game. We fast forward. I get 4 weeks after the incident. So very hard to defend. I couldn't kind of say, look, it was an accident. And I'm not blaming the situation or what happened in New Zealand. It was just kind of, it was just something that was...
A sequence of events, kind of.
It was in us, right? Yeah. It was kind of like the way we played and the way we sort of wanted to defend our mates. And so that was a toughie, mate. I had to kind of sit there and it was Freddie's last game. You know, we've been through such a journey together. I never forget Freddie, you know, the day before the game sort of going, we were super confident we'd beat the Dogs. We had a certain style that was going to go well, and you know we were leading at half time, and our stats had told us that we're in that position every time at half time we don't lose, and we lost the sort of unlosable grand final in our mind, and we sent out Freddie as a runner up, which was pretty awkward from my perspective, and I didn't do my bit, other blokes didn't do their bit, and poor Fred had to walk off. And he was generally upset about it. You know, I remember, you know, he deserved to go to winner. So it was another crap one for us.
It's a tough one because that same mentality won you a grand final against the Warriors. So it's like,
correct.
You know,
it's an edge. And like I think playing on the edge, it can go either one way or the other. And I think that's what burned a lot of us out towards the end. And I think we'd played, you know, since Ricky walked in that first time he walked in and he called us all weak and soft and cafe like the day he walked in, which was a pre-season back in the end of 2001, we didn't have an off switch, and that was the mentality, but it was successful and it got us to that point. And then Freddie went, I'm done. And I sort of carried on to 2005, exhausted, and then I was done. Yeah, and that was kind of the end of that.
So when it was done for you, it was like, I'm just complete. There was no hesitation of how done you were in NRL, or?
Well, it's interesting because I was only 32, and if I look back at the day, like 32 is relatively young in the game today, but it was just signs we're a team not going through a rebuild.
Yeah, transition.
We were transitioning, and we just lost some really good players, and it was just tough. We tried to have that mentality of being physical without having the pizzazz of a football team, and it was exhausting. We weren't winning. We missed the 8, and it was just probably time. Yeah,
wow. It's funny because like even to this day, you know, Roosters still play that style of footy with Hargreaves, with Radley, they're on that edge kind of thing. Granted, that edge is like probably a bit further away from your guys' edges. It's a modern edge, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So you retire, and I guess, did you end up playing any more footy after that, or no, that was just it?
No, look, I had opportunities, you know, to go overseas and do all that sort of thing. I thought you know, it was almost a break from football. I'd sort of got to that point where, you know, like yourself, you know, I've been playing since the age of 6, you know, and it was, and you know, it was in my backyard. I always played in the eastern suburbs. I lived in the eastern suburbs, went to school there. It was my footy team. It was just so entrenched, you know. It was probably
consumes you.
It was a lot, and the style of football that we played, it was successful. I had a lot of fun and success in the back end of it. I didn't have the capacity to to do something else. I mean, I think if I was a bit more settled in life, to probably go and do the UK thing and go and experience it, but for the right reasons, you know.
Okay.
I wouldn't,
Just
thinking.
take the paycheck on it. You don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, I think I would have loved to have gone and done something in a successful team, but I don't know if I had the energy for it.
Yeah.
That was probably in the back of my mind thinking about it. So, no, that was it, mate. Hang the boots up and no more footy.
Mate, hang the boots up, put the dancing shoes on. Appear on the 4th series, the Australian version of Dancing with the Stars, mate. Walk us through that. How do you get rid of that?
Oh, my God. Yeah. So,
Oh, I hope there's footage out there. How good.
yeah, no, I've deleted everything. Oh, look, I think that was the fun element, you know, through that back end. I'd retired and did I want to go into media? I don't know. There was like things that were happening. I was doing a little bit of Triple M. I had a little bit of work at the Roosters. I was hosting some people in, corporate boxes. They reached out, said, do you want to dance with the stars? Do you want to do this other reality TV show? And I sort of had a bit of fun with it all, really. It was kind of like all presented itself. And, but it was funny because it was looking back, like I never really chased any of those things.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I was just doing it with no direction, really. And
Well, it's almost like, you're a 300-game player. You've played for your state, you played for your country. It's almost like the natural progression of a player of your stature. Like, yeah, of course you would want to go into the media kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think even looking back on it, I sort of, I did a few gigs here and there, and I never forget when people would say, oh, so Luke, what are you doing with yourself now?
Yeah.
I'd say bits and pieces. And it was always bits and pieces for a long period of time. I'm going, is bits and pieces kind of a job? I'm not sure it is. So, but no, I tried. I had a go at a lot of different things, and back to what we were saying before, I was just in this sort of like this grey zone of, like footy was still there, and I'm interested in the game, and should I be doing some coaching? Should I be doing more radio, or do I present? I don't really like getting up on the stage too much, and so the anxiety of all those things of working it out, which I do feel for a lot of players when they get to that point, because it's not easy.
Yeah, because you're basically asked to like go from being a footy player to a professional presenter on TV or up, on stage. And you always see the comments on the internet, oh, he's terrible on the mic or whatever. He's not he's not trained to be on the mic. He's a footy player.
Hard.
So the Dancing with the Stars, though, what is the process? Do you train every day? Is it intense? Is it
It was intense.
Yeah, okay.
It was intense. I mean, it was terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Because that's doing something out of the comfort zone.
Massively.
Completely. And it was a lot of training. So it was pretty much 5 days a week, in a studio, learning how to do it.
No way. Had you met your wife yet? Because you could use those dance moves maybe to meet the wife.
Not as yet, but I'd sort of just, and another funny thing about it, right? And I think that things have changed. And look, I'm from an old school world a little bit more so. It's like, letting yourself go a little bit more and being more adventurous, I suppose.
Try new things.
It's the fight between just let yourself go and do a dance show on live TV.
Yeah, mate.
Tell what are my mates going to think, And
Boys,
this is such a hard thing to do, but I kind of did it half-heartedly. I got through a couple of episodes, which was as good as I could probably get.
Good.
But it was, mate. It's a fear-facing moment.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
I can imagine.
Doubt. So that was probably something good to throw yourself at.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's a cool thing to say you did. Like
Tick a box.
Yeah, you tell your kids, "Oh, I've actually played done Dancing with the Stars." Your dad, he can move a little bit,
tiny bit.
And mate, so 2010, you joined the board of the Roosters. You said,
Yep.
What was the catalyst for that all coming together?
Yeah, look, there was an opportunity for I think it might have been David Gingell, who was running 9 at the time. He was on that board, and then he moved on, and look, I went into corporate at that stage, and look, it was really great because back in the day we had a couple of people, ex-players, been on the board, but from a structure point of view, it was nice to have an old player to come on. So I go into it just with this really nice board, obviously Chairman Nick Politis, and just get to see it from that perspective, and just be part of that success. Like it was, as I said, back in those days, we got the club humming, and now to see it continue on was fantastic. So I've enjoyed my time. I mean, I'm still there, and things have changed, and things are getting more professional, and things are costing more, and there's bigger paychecks, and there's things happening, and there's always moving parts in the rugby league world. But it's it's still very exciting.
Wow. And just quickly, the back-to-back premiership. Obviously, you got the 13 as well. But just to be a part of the first team to win back-to-back since essentially forever, what was that like?
It was brilliant, mate. Super exciting. Once again, it's just a great bunch of blokes. I mean, Boyd Cordner, what a legend. Jakey Friend, and just some really pivotal moments happened through that. Those couple of years were fantastic. Really get to me. I knew Trent Robinson, in my playing days, so we've got a long relationship, and just to see the involvement through what he brought to the club, and how those players were just played so tough through that period was fantastic. To go back to back was huge, and just a great time for the club. Just be seeing Penrith do it now is just it's amazing to see what they've been able to do. But let's hope the club can continue doing that.
Mate, I ask all the boys favourite rapper of all time. I'm assuming you're not a big rap man, so favourite musician of all time.
That's a toughie. Oh, mate, I'm a bit of a sing-along guy, so a bit of Coldplay.
Okay, a bit of Coldplay.
Well, Pearl Jam back in the day, obviously. I'll take you back to my grunge kind of early 90s, mid-90s, but now if I was going to put something, I'd probably be Coldplay.
Did you go to the concert when they come out?
I did indeed.
Wow, okay, so big Coldplay fan. Was it good?
Great, fantastic, mate. Sung along the songs, mate. And I also took my my daughters to Taylor Swift, mate. So
there you go.
I've got 2 girls, so I'm also listening to Taylor Swift, if that makes any difference.
Mate, favourite movie of all time?
Toughie, but I Good Will Hunting.
That's a classic.
Good Will.
Mate, that the scene where he's in the therapist's office with the picture or whatever, talking about his wife, whatever, just amazing.
Fantastic,
so
mate.
good.
Yeah, it's a cracker.
Mate, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And Ricketson's Insurance?
Ricketson Insurance, mate. Get on board.
Get on board. Get on board. Thanks for joining, mate. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks,
Thank
boys.
you.